All right, troops, steady up. It's Crusty Old Crow back again with another one of the Tactical Perspective toy reviews on the G.I. Joe classified 6-inch line by Hasbro. I've been reviewing a few of these now and been having a great time as just a guy with a different perspective on these toys. It's probably a shared perspective by many out there who grew up with these toys back in the 80s when they were back in the 3.5-inch scale. Hasbro has revisited that generation with a higher price point and higher quality figurine to bring us back to our childhood mindsets. And as a result, I like a few others, far more talented reviewers, will sit and buy these figures and point out the details they like. With mine, the Tactical Perspective, I like to do mine in a format where I run it like a military style inspection. I go from head to toe with the figurine and I talk about the details that the Hasbro and the design team have included in those figurines. And some of those details are very subtle, but they're very familiar to military vets as equipment that we would put on our gear when we were serving, or those of you that are serving might recognize them as well. And so I speak to those kind of points and, you know, kind of what the benefits of that detail brings to the character and helps express and solidifies that character in the realm of a military believability and as, you know, creative, freedom of creativity and, let's say, the ability to apply a bit of sci-fi and make it look real. And G.I. Joe figurines are a great example of that. So today on the Tactical Perspective, I am going to be doing a figurine that I didn't think I was going to end up buying, but then I bought for very personal reasons, like so much is. It's Sergeant Slaughter, guys. We're going to be doing Sergeant Slaughter today. And there's a good reason why I have to do this figurine. We're going to be going over it, guys. As I mentioned in other videos, I do have severe ADHD, turns out, and you know, I've managed that throughout my life, and so with that, I identify to things a lot differently. I have different kind of mental connections to things, and my childhood, you know, definitely there's a lot of anchor points there that I see today, things that draw me back to that, and Sergeant Slaughter is definitely one of them. So when I run this, after I do the head-to-toe inspection and I show off his kit and I talk about the likes, the dislikes, point to improve, point to sustain, all that other stuff, bearing in mind that I don't expect Hasbro to suddenly jump through any hoops and change the work they've done to change price points to meet, you know, a single critic's ideas. But after I do that, I give them a grade, both on playability and then on what I call the tactical grade. Does this figure make sense? Is this something I'm used to seeing in a military theater perspective? Things like that, right? And so that's how we run it. And then also today, before we get into the figure, I wanted to bring up something about Sergeant Slaughter that take us back to the 80s, back to, you know, this is why I call myself the Crusty Old Crow, because Crusty Old Crows are the guys that go, it was bitter wind, and I remember, and I wish it were still, and I try not to be that guy too much, but guys, I'm almost 50. I'm definitely probably that guy a little bit inside. So back in the 80s, when Sergeant Slaughter was introduced, we got him on two fronts, really. We got him both as a G.I. Joe character, the drill instructor, who everybody basically thought was the toughest guy in the Joes. Like, if you were facing Sergeant Slaughter, you were going to have a bad day if you were Cobra. And we got him... And the write-up we got as kids came off the back of the file card, which I'm just going to read to you. Back in the 80s, this was pretty much what we got on Sergeant Slaughter. It was that his name was classified, you got his service number, and he was a military drill instructor, survival trainer, and he was born in Parris Island, South Carolina. So it says, just about every member of the G.I. Joe team is qualified to be a drill instructor, so it takes a special brand of heavy-duty honcho to keep them squared away, right? So break from that, yeah, everybody in G.I. Joe would be qualified drill instructor, because in order to advance past the rank of corporal into your master corporals in Canada, sergeants, you actually have to have some leadership courses, right? So you have to have some leadership formal training, and one of them is teaching drill. It's pretty much the first thing you learn how to teach. So yeah, everybody's qualified to teach drill, but Sergeant Slaughter kind of lives for it, right? So it says Sergeant Slaughter fits the bill the way his bullet head fits his Smokey Bear hat. Let's face it, the man be rough and he take no guff. Okay, so they talk about the Smokey Bear hat. That's this chapeau right here, right? Synonymous when you think of U.S. military drill instructors. That's the hat you're going to think of, right? So this is who we got. It just says at the end, they say he cut his teeth with a bogey wheel from a Patton tank, and that his first words were Semper Fi. They say that when Sarge dresses down a boot in Camp Lejeune, the trainees cringe all the way to Pendleton. Most boots would rather dive for apples and grease traps than to cross the Sarge. They say you can blow a month's pay one night at full Greenland. Of course, jarheads are prone to exaggeration. We all know that it's impossible to blow a month's pay in Thule, Greenland. I have never been to Thule, Greenland, so I'm hoping that's an inside joke in the U.S. forces. I don't get it. I'm sorry. Anyways, so that's the write-up on Sergeant Slaughter. That's how we got him back in the day, and I remember he had his Maulers and he had his vehicle. It wasn't a figure I ever bought because I was very upset when he came out, because at the same time he was in the WWF. I think it was the WWF back then, not the WWE. As this same guy. This was him. And he'd show up on my TV screen, Saturday Morning Wrestling, and he would come and scream at guys like the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, and he would wrestle them, and he would promote G.I. Joe. And it confused me, because when you're a little kid and you're so into things still for me had to make sense. And to me, it didn't make sense that he was in real life being a wrestler, but he was also in this fictitious, awesome universe fighting Cobra. There's no Cobra in real life. So to me, that line got crossed, and Sergeant Slaughter was the culprit. And a chapter of my innocence was beat the crap out of by Sergeant Slaughter. So I never wanted that figure. I never got it until last week. So the other reason I wanted to talk about Sergeant Slaughter a little bit is the 80s also had something going for it for G.I. Joe that God, I wish Hasbro would bring back. I don't know if any of you remember it that much, but probably a few of you. Those of us who had the G.I. Joes in the 3.5-inch line would go to the back of the card, not thinking the card was going to be worth a whole lot, I don't think. And we would sometimes cut out the file card. You had to have that. That was proof of your collection. That was proof that you had that guy. You knew that guy and you had his file. You could go through his file. But they also had these little icons just above the file card, little squares you would cut out, 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. These were the proofs of purchase back in the day, that every G.I. Joe and every vehicle, every set came with these proofs of purchase. And you had to cut these out, because if you were an 80s kid and you were a Joe, you knew that the more of these you had, the more prepared you were for the next mail away offer. Something that I think needs to come back. So I joked on, I think it was Saturday Morning Cartoon, I watched his Stalker review, and I said the only thing that's missing is the windsurfer. G.I. Joe had a camouflage windsurfer at one point. If you want to capture a snapshot of the 80s, think of Miami Vice, Phil Collins, and windsurfing. Okay, and Stalker had a tactical windsurfer. It was awesome, but it was a mail away offer, and you needed a certain amount of UPC codes, and you would collect them up as a kid. You know, Mom, can you please put a check for $3 in this envelope with these UPC codes and mail this to the company? And in about 6 weeks, you would get this package that you couldn't buy at stores, and it was awesome to have to buff your G.I. Joe collection. And I say, we need to bring it back. Bring it back. Is because we have HasLab right now going as like this kind of separate company almost outside of the classified that lends to it, but it's very much its own thing, and harder to get, higher price points. And I was like, the money's all still going to the same place. What if you were to have like these proofs of purchase back on the collector's boxes, removable at their choice, and you could mail those in to reserve your spot for an SDC Comic Con friggin' exclusive figurine that you'd still pay for it, but that was your buy-in to get that spot. Sending in those UPCs, or it got you a 25% off on a buy-in for a new HasLab product if you sent in a certain number of UPCs. Or maybe, they do things like alternative sculpt heads, dynamic bases for the figurines, and these are things that you could mail in to mail in your UPCs and maybe a small quantity of funds to Hasbro in exchange for these little nice to haves that aren't sitting on a Toys R Us or GameStop shelf somewhere. That you have to really kind of go that extra mile. I think Hasbro would benefit from something like that, in that these proofs of purchase are kind of a snapshot of how your market's changing. Are you getting more of these proofs of purchase with each offer? Are you on the right path? I think they know they're on the right path, but I think it's just proof that the revenue is working, because now you have people buying more figurines to get some of these rarer items. I wish they'd bring that back. So anyways, enough about the 80s and Sergeant Slaughter on that. What I'll do is I'm going to tell you a story about Sergeant Slaughter while I show you the figure, because there's another reason, one more reason, why Sergeant Slaughter just kind of had to happen for me. I'm going to pan the camera over to Sergeant Slaughter himself, and we'll talk about all the things that he gets. He is probably one of the most loaded out Joe figurines you're going to get in the classified line, for sure, guys. We are talking accessories out the boot. Now, in a lot of other reviewers, you're going to see them talk about points of articulation on the figurines and the box details and things like that. I showed you the box briefly. I didn't go over the back and what's in it. I'm going to do that through this video during the inspection. And I don't really talk about the points of articulation unless there's an issue with one of the many known points of articulation on these. And with Sergeant Slaughter, you really don't have any issues with the articulation. He's not loaded down by a load-bearing vest or flak armor, a backpack, web belts, any of that that tactical gear that is obstructive a little bit on the other figurines. He does not suffer from that. So we're going to go through the inspection here really quick. Well, not really quick. Nothing I do is quick, guys. What do? I do one take, gentlemen and ladies, and I don't ask forgiveness for it. I don't care. It's how I roll, and one day I might change it to doing some editing, but this is a self-satisfying product. I just really appreciative of anybody who's watching, subscribing, liking, just because I recognize when like-minded people find something that, was interesting, and I appreciate that you found what I was saying interesting. So, moving on to the head-to-toe inspection. We have the removable hat, and after we see the hat up close, you'll start to see a face that I'm going to talk about. So here is this, as they called it, the Smokey the Bear hat, the peak cap. Looks brilliant on him. It's a good solid fit. This does not have any fit issues. We're just going to put it off to the side for now. We'll put it behind him right there. No fit issues whatsoever with that hat. You could flip that figure through the air and it wouldn't fall off until it hit the ground maybe. So there you go. And he's got his iconic aviator glasses. He's got that receding hairline because, as you know, as you've seen, if you're a wrestling fan, Sergeant Slaughter's a real dude. And he has real male pattern baldness issues, and he owns it, and the figure owns it as well. Good for him. So if I were to remove those aviator glasses, which is just so nice that they allowed us to do that, there's the face of extreme displeasure, and one that the Joes have learned to be concerned about. That is a man very unimpressed and about to do something about that. Very great facial sculpt on the guy. He's got absolute military doctrine close haircut going on for him, right? You could set your watch to that haircut, I think. And like I said, it is a good reflection of the actual real life Sergeant Slaughter. You know, don't talk about his eyebrows. You just don't even bring them up. Maybe that's why he's wearing those sunglasses. They're not dainty. Don't say that. Stop saying it. Don't say dainty. His mustache, a perfect, you know, little soup strainer there, follows that curve of that cheek line and really helps show off, you know, that facial expression of getting ready to suplex a Cobra Viper who is not paying attention. He's got the hands. There are so many hands with this figure. You get for the comments on other figurines, how people wish there were more hands with some of these guys. This will give you a steady supply of other hands. So he is capable of holding a weapon. You get his grippy, shooty hands, right? With wrist movement that goes up and down. Jeez. Oh, here I go talking about that articulation. Anyways, we'll put those hands off to the side. So you have those ones. As you can see, he's got that pointy hand and he's got that I'm going to choke your ass hand. So he can do that. Ambidextrous. He's an ambi pointer and an ambi choker, right? So you can do that with both hands or one hand. Oh man, I should have had him double pointing at you, like Bon Jovi style, like either one. Anyways, but I didn't. And then straight up, what you're afraid of, he's going to pull you to the other side of that cargo truck and sort you out the old way. There you go. So you have a variety of ways you can pose your Sergeant Slaughter depending on how you remember him. I remember him basically pointing at the TV camera, telling the Iron Sheik what he was going to do to him. Like I explained in another video, I grew up, I didn't really have the cartoons unless I broke through a UHF dial like radar from MASH and managed to scramble together a snow version of one. So I wasn't used to Sergeant Slaughter in that form. I was used to him as a wrestler. Moving on down from the head, he's got that tight little muscle shirt, black. You know, it's very Paris Island feel to it. No problems at all with the uniform on this. It is perfect for a drill instructor. You know, standing on under the hot sun on that sandy, you know, sand blowing parade square, sorting Joes out. I love the fact that they included the belt on there, but you know, from head down to legs and including the boots, absolute perfect. Love the two-tone jungle boots on it. And this little accessory I leave on it because I'm afraid I'm going to lose it or break it, but there's his whistle of happiness. He only blows it when he's really happy, right? So comes with all of that, but we're not done. So why I said I was going to talk about that face, I'm just going to quickly get into the accessories really quick. He also comes with his drill cane, right? With the little leather lashing at the back. Let's get a better shot there. And it fits beautifully in his hand. No loop on the belt that I could tell where I could store this, but that's fine off to the side. That is strictly for posing purposes only. I could definitely see him beating somebody over the head with it. So the weapon. So he comes with, I believe this, you know, it might be an AK-47, but I think it's actually an AK-74, which is a different ammo type entirely. And this is one of the best looking weapons I've seen them come out in the classified. I was surprised it actually came with Sergeant Slaughter of all the characters, but I'm just really happy it's here. It's got that removable mag. Some people love it, some people hate it. It's just, it tells the story. But one of the things it has that might have confused a few guys, I'm going to put the mag down before I drop it. There, I see it. I see it. It's right there. I'm not losing anything today. One of the things that might confuse somebody if they didn't think about it, it's a very easy to lose piece, and it's that mag light attachment. I'm not sure entirely from the detailing if they wanted this to be a mag light or if this is possibly like a PAC-4 laser sight, you know. I think it's a mag light, but it looks a bit long. Could be a combi, who knows? Or it could just be completely sci-fi, which is fine. Anyways, the problem is that it's a separate piece entirely, and when you take it out, you can see right down into the emptiness of the weapon housing, like the upper receiver. You can see into the handrails, and you don't see any gas tube or any of the normal mechanism stuff at the bottom. You can tell that it's not sculpted in there. And when you lose this, I'm not sure just how that looks. It looks fine from the side, but when you start going up, I mean, you could forgive it. It's not the end of the rifle, but the reason I think they did that is because to have it with the Maglite on it, like such, it makes it hard to get the hand sometimes in certain poses. And the width of this with the foresight and the barrel itself makes it kind of hard to get into the hand. So I think they took this off so you could get it in the hand and then put it down. Just my opinion. If you guys have other thoughts on that, let me know in the comments, please. If you have anything to say, let me know in the comments. I love hearing and reading back what you guys think. The final accessory, which is just perfect, and this tells me that Hasbro got what I was getting at with it. This is very confusing, having a guy that breaks the fourth wall the way Sergeant Slaughter does, but then they include this, right? It's his own damn action figure, and I think that is phenomenal. And that just sold the product to me. It was like, yeah, Ryan, maybe you weren't supposed to ever take Sergeant Slaughter too seriously compared to other Joes and their roles, but, you know, we also didn't. And in that, it was make it beautiful. So guys, I'm going to talk a little bit more about who this guy reminds me of. This is me, the veteran in me, speaking up. And where he becomes even more realistic as a G.I. Joe, right? So with it, this reminds me of a guy I was trained by in battle school back in the 90s. So battle school is the next phase of Canadian soldier training in the combat arms, where you kind of specialize more in the role that you were selected for, right? So if you were infantry, you would go to an infantry battle school. If you were armored, like me, you went to an armored battle school, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just a more specialized training before you got to your regiment and they got their training into you. You would train at the battle school to learn more of the basics that they needed you to come with, right? So I had an instructor, I'm not going to say names, but he had a nickname, and we used to call him, they used to call him Bucket Mouth, right? And guys, I'm going to tell you right now, I was never the perfect soldier, and I was never the greatest soldier. I was never the worst soldier, except when at the very beginning. I was not very good. I'm not going to lie. It took me a while to get into the military culture and embrace it, and then once I did, I was fine. But, you know, back when I first started, I would be the first guy to tell you I was a bag of hammers. So anyways, my point being is that when I tell a story of this figurine reminding me of this guy, and this guy has a story that goes like this and it makes him look a little foolish, or it's just, you know, might be a slight embarrassing. I'm not going to mention names and all that. And it's not a judgment on the person, because guys, I probably have a few stories myself getting told out there about the time I did something silly. So no judgments, just trying to entertain with some stories. So this is Bucket Mouth. Bucket Mouth right down to the face and the stash and that rigid jawline. So Bucket Mouth was the master corporal on my course that I hated dealing with the most. Most of us did. He was your, you know, he slept and breathed army. He was the kind of guy that would have the dress rigs tattooed on the small of his back and then read them in the mirror. He just, everything he did was just by the book, perfection in his eyes. And most of us would look at it and be like, okay, yeah, so that's the standard and you're upholding it. Good job. But he would just, and he would condemn others for not achieving the standard that he could achieve. So the name Bucket Mouth really just kind of stemmed from the amount of BS that he used to pour out and things like that. And I didn't know about that when I first met him. I learned about that later. But he would do silly, dumb stuff every now and then to overstep his role as an instructor. And one of them would be like, hey, your shirt wasn't ironed correctly. Why don't you all mark time on them? And then, you know, you'd ruin some military kit with boot polish that would never come out. And, you know, but that was his idea of a corrective measure to a small problem. So he became notorious for kind of being over the top, weirdly ridiculous. So this to me reminded me of Bucket Mouth. And this to me would be the job you'd have Sergeant Slaughter in his role as a drill instructor, which means he's a rear line, back at base kind of guy. He's not up on the front lines teaching drill. He's more at the back, getting the recruits in order to go on, but not going on to fight himself. You know, that's not how G.I. Joe depicts him and everything like that. And that's certainly not what we're talking about. But that, to me, as soon as I saw it, was like, if I remember Bucketmouth teaching drill, and I couldn't have done a better comparison than Sergeant Slaughter and Bucketmouth. So, you know, again, the guy was a nice guy and everything like that outside of it, I'm sure. But Sergeant Slaughter, definite connection to my time in the military. And I just thought I'd share that funny little story with them. Price points wise, this guy sits a little bit higher because he does come a little bit more loaded out. He's one of the more premium kind of figures wherein it's comes with extra kit, but not quite the price point that you would find, you know, Snake Eyes and Timber or Scrap Iron in the drone at. I picked him up for about 45 Canadian. So as opposed to the 35 Canadian for the standard figurine. Last thing I'm going to quickly address is just one of the things I said I didn't like about this. You know, I respect and I love the realism that they're bringing the military weapons into stuff. But I wanted to quickly bring another tactical point across. And that is cross-compatibility and ammunition. Okay, so we are dealing with a very diverse group of G.I. Joes, right? Everybody's diverse. G.I. Joe, Cobra, everybody's got a cool gun. Everybody's doing great detailed guns and they look awesome with their figures, but do they always make sense? And the answer is not really. It doesn't matter, but not really. And the reason I bring that up is so Warsaw Pact or Warsaw stock ammunition, which is what the Soviets use, that takes a different type of round than what the NATO stock uses, which is what all the NATO countries are using, right? So you got an AK-74 the AK-47's it's a 7.62, but it's by 0.39 millimeter, wherein the U.S. 7.62 and everything is 0.51 millimeter, right? So what I'm getting at, guys, and it's old doctrine, you don't use the same ammo as your enemy. Because you don't want your enemy to pick up the ammo off your fallen troops and you've just resupplied them, right? So you don't make it so your ammo is interchangeable like that. I don't know if anyone's ever thought about that, but that's one of the reasons driving it. So here's Sergeant Slaughter coming into battle with an AK-47 or 74, a Soviet type era weapon, the Warsaw type, and he runs out of ammo. Well, he's not going to get it from any of the other Joes who aren't carrying around a Soviet Cold War or Warsaw type weapon. They're carrying around the NATO stuff, right? The Brits got the Brits gun, the Americans got the Americans guns, the snipers all have high-end US guns, like most of this is US. There might be some Euro stuff in there, but the AK is one of the ones where you're like, okay, what happens when he runs out of ammo? Who's he getting that from? So that to me is a tactical no. But I'm not going to let it affect the grade too much. So the grade for this figure, playability, guys, I said I would talk about the playability. Playability wise, I'm going to give this one A++. You can do whatever you want with this figure. You can choke slam Cobras over his head and choke slam Cobras against the wall or bench press guys over his head. You can have him in a variety of firing positions. He looks good pretty much doing everything you want, including the double shotgun I gotta do later. But definitely playability, 100%, one of the better Joes out there for that. Can't say enough on that. A++. Tactically, with the Soviet Warsaw stock weapon, I'm not even going to let that cost it a single point on the tactical scale, just because I was so happy about it coming with removable aviator glasses, a whistle, and its own damn figurine, and then all them damn hand options. He is one handy guy. Stupid puns. No, guys, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do too many puns. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. Anyways, A++ tactical. He looks like a drill instructor. He looks exactly like you needed Sergeant Slaughter to look, and he is not very sci-fi at all. He is frighteningly real and in your face. And definitely iconic. And to anybody who's served in an armored regiment, guys, I slam bucket mouth, but every unit's got at least one bucket mouth. Every military unit, they need a bucket mouth. You need that for your morale and for your good stories. And honestly, I can picture a military experience without at least one good bucket mouth and amongst them. And I am glad to share my bucket mouth with you today, Sergeant Slaughter. We salute you. All right, Joes, that's it for me today. Thanks very much for watching. Remember, if you really like this video, please hit like. If you got something to say about it, please open the floor, bring it up. I love hearing from yous, and I hope to hear from more of yous. And then if you really like this, which means that I'm not necessarily wasting anyone's time, please subscribe. That's always an interesting number to see change. And I'll see you on the next review, guys. I'm going to keep it going, and peace out.